Hey everyone, welcome to Inspired Foodies. Today's recipe will be a breakfast related item. So a little backstory before I get into it. A few nights ago I was craving something sweet, so I decided to do breakfast for dinner. I ended up eating some waffles, but I decided to get really creative with it, so I did some chocolate chip mini waffles with a blueberry compote. I made a batch for my mother, and she ended up liking it so much that she asked me to make a video on it. So this is what today's video will be about. So I'm going to break it down into 3 parts for the ingredients. The first part is the waffle mix. So I'll be using some chocolate chip whole grain waffle mix by Kodiak Cakes. This one, the next ingredient is I'm using milk. Now, a lot of mixes say use water, but you can substitute milk because it adds a little bit more protein and it gives me a little bit more sweetness. So I prefer milk over water when I make my mixes. And lastly, the key ingredient that differentiates pancakes from waffles is actually some oil. I have a stick of butter here. This is for my griddle. Basically, I'm just going to grease it a little bit so that it adds a little bit more of a crisp on the outer edges of the waffle. Now, part 2 is the blueberry compote. You're going to need a handful of blueberries. You can use frozen or fresh berries. I'll be using some frozen berries that are starting to thaw. You're going to need some lemon. You're going to need some sugar. And lastly, you're going to need about a 1/4 cup of water, which I've already started boiling in a pot for the compote. Now lastly, part 3, as I said, it's optional because it's presentation related. I'm going to be using whipped cream, and I have some powdered sugar. Now, if you don't have powdered sugar, but you want to use it, it's very simple to make at home. You just take some regular sugar, and you're going to put it in a blender and finely blend it for 5 minutes. A lot of recipes online say add cornstarch. The only reason you add cornstarch is so it prevents the sugar from being trapping any moisture so that it clumps. So it just keeps the sugar nice and dry. You don't have to if you don't want to though. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my compote. Since I've already started boiling my water, this is actually on medium, but I'm going to turn it up because you actually want to put it on full heat. I'm going to add my blueberries to the water. Next, I'm going to add about a spoon of sugar because you want your blueberries, you want the compote to be nice and sweet. And lastly, I'm going to add a teaspoon of lemon. So this is where you have to be really careful with the lemon itself. It's so sour that you could actually end up making your compote a bit more sour than you expected to, but in order to compensate for that, you just add a little bit more sugar, which I'm doing in this case because I added a little bit too much. And you're just gonna let this boil for like 5 minutes. And you notice the color's already started changing. That's what we want. So with this compote, you can add some more berries. I might add a few more, but I'm gonna actually try to make it a little bit thick this time. You can make it thick or thin, however you want it. I'm gonna go for the thick one because it tastes really good as a jelly-like. So in the meantime, while this is actually boiling up, I'm going to be doing the waffle mix. I'm going to plug in my waffle maker because I want it to warm up a bit. So I'm going to take the waffle mix and I'm going to add it to the bowl. I'm just going to add enough to make 2 mini waffles, not too much. I'm going to add a little bit of oil. I don't want my waffles to be too oily, but you want them to have some oil. And I'm going to add milk. And I'm just going to whisk these together nicely. You don't want to overbeat it too much, but you got that nice texture right there. And I'm just going to let it sit for about 30 seconds, similar to how I let pancakes sit. So while my waffle mix is sitting for a little bit, I wanted to show you this, like, the compote. So as you can see, I've lowered the heat a little bit because I don't want it to burn too much, but you still want it to boil, because you can see that the flavors are nicely mixing now. The color of the water has changed because now it's boiling the blueberries, and you have the lemon and the sugar. The lemon juice already is in it, but the sugar has dissolved nicely, so now you have these blueberries, and which will turn into a compote. It'll be nice and thick when you cool it. So my waffle iron should be nice and hot now. So I'm just going to take this stick of butter, and I'm going to go ahead and just grease it a little bit. So, okay, remember, you don't want your waffle mixture to be too thin, because then it will not hold together well. It'll actually leak out of the waffle maker. So that's going to take about 2 minutes with my waffle maker. I'm going to go ahead and make another batch real quick. So I just turned off the heat of the stove. I turned off my stove, and I wanted to show you guys the compote. You can see it's nice and dark now. All the blueberries, the color of the liquid matches the blueberries. And I did a little taste test, and it's perfectly balanced. It's got a little bit of that sourness from the lemon, and it's nice and sweet from the sugar and the blueberries itself. So I'm just going to let this sit and cool for a little bit. It might not be as thick as I want it to be, but it will still, it tastes great, and that's what I wanted. So I'm going to take a look at my waffle. Look at that, golden brown, perfect. I'm going to actually take it out and put it aside on the plate. I'm going to take my last mixture. It's nice and thick, but it's also still able, you can still pour it. Actually, before I do that, I just need to grease it a little bit more so that it's non-stick. This is very hot, I gotta be careful. I'm just gonna pour it down in the center. You also want to make sure that you never fill the waffle iron because it can overflow. So you always go for 3/4. I'm gonna put that down like that. And we're gonna let it sit for another minute. So now I'm gonna take it out. It's a little bit under in terms of the quantity, but it looks more like a Belgian waffle, but that's fine. That's still a good looking golden brown waffle. Okay guys, so what I'm gonna do next is I'm actually going to add my compote. You can see it's become a little bit thick now. This is not too much, I know that, but you can always add more berries if you want to make more compote, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and add my compote. It's nice and thick, like exactly like I want it, along with the fact that it is sweet and perfectly sweet and a little bit sour. Lastly, some whipped cream on top. For the final touches, I'm going to add some powdered sugar. And there you have it, folks. Your very own waffles with blueberry compote. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You can also view other recipes made by my mother here on this very YouTube channel. Or you can always follow her on Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more updates. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.